There is a lake in Antarctica that has been sealed off from the outside world for roughly 15 million years. It sits beneath nearly 4 kilometers of solid ice, in total darkness, at a pressure that would crush most submarines. When Russian scientists finally drilled down and reached the water in February of 2012, they did not find a dead, sterile void. They found genetic material, sequences of DNA that matched almost nothing in any existing database. Life in a place where life should have ended millions of years ago. In the Amazon rainforest of Peru, there is a river that boils. The water reaches 86 degrees Celsius, hot enough to cook an animal that falls in within seconds. For nearly a century, geologists dismissed the local reports as legend because the standard geological model says a boiling river simply should not exist there. The nearest active volcano is more than 700 kilometers away. In the mountains of central Norway, strange lights have been appearing over a single valley for at least 200 years. Since 1984, an automated research station has been recording them. And after 4 decades of continuous monitoring by physicists and engineers, the leading explanation is still, in the most honest scientific terms available, that we do not know what they are. And on a small island off the coast of Yemen, there is a tree that bleeds. Its sap runs deep red, like an open wound. A third of all the plant species on that island exist nowhere else on the planet. In 1834, a British naturalist called it the strangest place on Earth. It has not become any less strange since. This is our countdown of the 15 most bizarre places on Earth that even scientists cannot fully explain. Stay until the end, because number 1 is that Antarctic lake, and what came up from beneath the ice has been quietly changing what biology thought it knew about the limits of life. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where in the world you are watching from right now. We want to see how many countries this video can reach. Number 15. The Rainbow Mountains of Zhangye-Dangxia, Gansu Province, China. From a distance, they do not look real. Entire hillsides are striped in bands of crimson, gold, green, and deep blue, folded and tilted as if an artist had poured liquid color across the landscape and let it harden. Tour operators are regularly accused of editing their photographs. They are not. The colors are exactly that vivid in person. The formation was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2010. Geologists agree on the broad outline of how it formed. Over roughly 24 million years, layers of red sandstone and mineral deposits were laid down, then buckled upward by the same tectonic collision that raised the Himalayas, then carved by wind and rain. The individual colors come from different minerals. Iron oxide produces the reds and yellows. Traces of other compounds produce the greens and blues. But here is where the certainty ends. The precise sequence of chemical conditions that produced such sharply divided, perfectly preserved bands, rather than a muddy blur, has never been fully reconstructed. Why some layers oxidized and others did not, why the boundaries between colors remain so clean after millions of years of weathering remains an open question in the geological record. The mountains are real, the chemistry is real, the complete recipe is not. Number 14. Xanay-Timpixca, the boiling river, in the Mayantuyacu region of the Peruvian Amazon. For centuries, the Ashaninka people spoke of a river deep in the jungle where the water boiled, guarded by a giant serpent spirit. Shamans considered it sacred. Western scientists said it could not exist because boiling rivers require a powerful heat source, and there was no volcano anywhere near it. In 2011, a Peruvian geophysicist named Andres Russo, then a doctoral student at Southern Methodist University in Texas, followed his grandfather's stories into the rainforest to find out if it was real. It was. He measured a stretch of river, approximately 6.4 kilometers long, where the water temperature climbed to around 86 degrees Celsius, just short of a rolling boil. Animals that fall in are cooked alive. What makes it so puzzling is the source of the heat. Rousseau's research confirmed the river is real and the temperatures are real, but the system is not volcanic. It appears to be a fault-fed hydrothermal feature, where water seeps deep into the earth, heats up, and rises again through a crack in the crust. Yet the specific geological configuration that concentrates so much heat so far from any volcanic activity remains one of the most unusual thermal anomalies ever documented. The Ashaninka knew it was there for generations. Science needed a jungle expedition and a temperature probe just to catch up. Number 13. The Eternal Flame Falls in Chestnut Ridge Park, near Buffalo, New York. Behind a small waterfall, tucked into a hollow in the rock, a flame burns. It flickers, sometimes goes out, and is regularly relit by hikers, but it has been burning, on and off, for a very long time. A flame behind a waterfall is strange enough. What the flame is made of is stranger. It is fueled by natural gas seeping up through the rock. That, by itself, is not unusual. Natural gas flames occur in many places, but most natural gas is produced deep underground, where extreme heat cooks organic material into methane. When researchers led by Arndt Schimmelmann at Indiana University studied the seep, they found the rock beneath it was nowhere near hot enough to produce gas by the standard model. The shale here is relatively cool, and geologically, it should not be generating the volume of gas that feeds the flame. Somehow, this seep is producing hydrocarbons through a process that does not match the textbook explanation for how natural gas forms. It is a small flame, easy to miss, in a public park visited by families every weekend, and it is quietly breaking one of the basic assumptions about how the Earth makes fuel. Number 12. Racetrack Playa in Death Valley National Park, California. It is a flat, dry lake bed cracked into a mosaic of dried mud stretching out under one of the harshest skies in North America. Scattered across it are heavy stones, some weighing well over 100 kilograms. And behind each stone runs a long, straight track carved into the surface, as if the rock had slid across the ground on its own. For decades, nobody had ever seen them move. The tracks appeared. The stones traveled hundreds of meters, but every time a person looked, the stones sat perfectly still. In 2014, researchers Richard Norris and James Norris, working through the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, finally captured the mechanism on camera. On rare occasions, a thin layer of water freezes overnight into sheets of ice. As the sun rises, the ice cracks into panels, and a light wind pushes those panels, which drag the stones along with them. It was an elegant answer, but it did not close the case entirely. The conditions required are so rare and so specific that many of the largest, most dramatic tracks have still never been directly observed forming. Whether the same gentle ice-shoving process can account for the heaviest stones and the longest, strangest curved trails remains debated. The playa gave up part of its secret. It kept the rest. Number 11. The Hum. This one has no single address because it has been reported from opposite corners of the planet. In Taos, New Mexico. In Bristol, England. In Windsor, Ontario. In Auckland, New Zealand. People describe a low, persistent droning sound, like a distant idling engine or a truck that never arrives. Roughly 1 in 50 people can hear it. The rest hear nothing at all, standing in the exact same room. For those who can, it can be maddening, robbing them of sleep, and driving some to leave their homes entirely. Investigators have chased down individual cases and occasionally found a culprit, an industrial fan, a gas pipeline, a factory compressor. But no single explanation accounts for all of them, and in many locations, exhaustive searches have turned up no measurable source at all. Some researchers suspect it is an internal phenomenon generated within the auditory system of sensitive individuals. Others insist it is a real, external low-frequency sound that standard equipment struggles to isolate. A global database maintained by researcher Glenn McPherson has logged thousands of reports and found no unifying cause. Thousands of people scattered across the world hearing the same sound, and no one can say for certain what it is, or whether it is even out there at all. Number 10. Movile Cave in southeastern Romania, near the Black Sea. In 1986, workers surveying land for a power station drilled into the ground and broke into a cave that had been sealed from the outside world for approximately 5.5 million years. No sunlight had touched it since before modern humans existed. The air inside is poisonous to us, thick with hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, and almost devoid of oxygen. And yet it is full of life. Microbiologist Serban Sabu was among the first to study it seriously, and what he found rewrote assumptions about how ecosystems can survive. More than 48 species live in Movile Cave, and at least 33 of them exist nowhere else on Earth. Blind spiders, translucent scorpions, unique leeches, and insects, all of them cut off for millions of years. But the truly bizarre part is the foundation of the whole system. On the surface, nearly all life depends, ultimately, on sunlight. In Movile Cave, there is none. Instead, the entire food web is built on chemosynthesis, bacteria that draw energy from the sulfurous chemicals in the water and air, feeding everything above them. It is a self-contained biosphere running on chemistry instead of light. And it survived, undisturbed and undiscovered, for 5.5 million years, a few meters below a field where people walked every day. Number 9. The Zone of Silence in the Mapimi Desert of Durango, Mexico. Local legend and decades of visitors claim the same thing, that in this stretch of desert, radio signals fade, compasses spin, and communications equipment fails. The stories intensified in 1970 when an American test missile veered wildly off course and crashed in this exact region, followed by teams of technicians who spent weeks recovering debris. Ever since, the area has attracted claims of strange magnetism, unusual meteorite falls, and equipment that refuses to work. The scientific reality is more complicated than the legend, and that is precisely what makes it interesting. Careful investigations have found that radios often work perfectly well here, and that many of the dramatic stories do not hold up under testing. Yet, the region does have genuinely unusual features, an unusually high concentration of meteorite fragments, distinctive local wildlife, and soil chemistry that continues to draw researchers. The Zone of Silence sits in a strange middle ground, a place where the wildest claims have been debunked, but where enough real anomalies remain that scientists keep returning. It is a reminder that the line between myth and measurement is not always as clean as we would like it to be. Number 8. Lake Natron in northern Tanzania, at the foot of an active volcano. From above, it glows red and orange, as if the ground itself were burning. The color comes from salt-loving microorganisms that thrive in water most living things cannot survive. This is one of the most caustic bodies of water on the planet. Its pH can climb as high as 10.5, approaching the alkalinity of ammonia, and its temperatures can reach around 60 degrees Celsius. Animals that die in the lake are not simply preserved. They are chemically transformed. The high concentration of natron, a mix of sodium carbonate and bicarbonate, calcifies their bodies, coating them in mineral and leaving them frozen in eerie, statue-like poses. Photographer Nick Brandt famously captured images of calcified birds and bats that looked like they had been carved from stone. Would you swim in a lake that turns the dead into statues? Here is the paradox that scientists still find remarkable. This lethal, corrosive lake is also the single most important breeding site on Earth for the lesser flamingo. Millions of them gather here precisely because the hassle water keeps predators away. A place that petrifies most animals is a nursery for one of them. The chemistry is deadly and life-giving at the same time, and the balance that allows it is still not fully understood. Number 7. The fairy circles of the Namib Desert in Namibia. Across hundreds of kilometers of arid grassland, the ground is dotted with millions of near-perfect circles, bare patches of reddish earth ringed by taller grass. They range from a couple of meters to more than 10 meters across. Seen from the air, they form a vast, regular, almost mathematical pattern that stretches to the horizon. Nothing about them looks natural, and yet no human made them. Two scientific theories have been fighting over these circles for roughly 40 years. The first, championed by ecologist Norbert Jürgens of the University of Hamburg, argues that sand termites create the circles by eating the roots of plants, clearing the bare patches and storing water underground. The second, championed by physicist Stefan Getzin, argues that the circles emerge from plants self-organizing as they compete for scarce water, forming patterns spontaneously, the way ripples form in sand. Both sides have published field evidence in major journals. Neither has been able to fully disprove the other. And the Himba people, who have lived alongside the circles for generations, offer a third explanation entirely, that they are the footprints of the gods, or the breath of a dragon beneath the earth. Termites, mathematics, or gods. After 4 decades of research, all 3 explanations are, in their own way, still on the table. Number 6. The Hessdalen Lights in the Hessdalen Valley of central Norway. For at least 200 years, people in this quiet valley have reported strange lights in the sky. Glowing orbs, white, yellow, and red, that hover, drift slowly along the valley floor, and sometimes shoot away at high speed. During the early 1980s, sightings became so frequent, sometimes many times per week, that scientists decided to do something rarely done with phenomena like this. They built a permanent research station to watch. Project Hessdalen, led in part by engineer Erling Strand, established automated instruments in 1984, and monitoring has continued in various forms ever since. Over 4 decades, researchers have gathered photographs, video, radar returns, and spectral readings. They have proposed explanations: ionized gas, unusual atmospheric plasma, dust from the valley's mineral-rich rock reacting in the air, even natural batteries formed by the geology of the valley. Some sightings have been explained as ordinary aircraft or misidentified stars, but a core of events remains genuinely unexplained. The lights show up on radar. They appear on multiple instruments at once. And after nearly 40 years of some of the most sustained scientific observation ever aimed at an aerial phenomenon, the most honest summary anyone can offer is still a variation on the same 3 words: we do not know. Number 5. The Devil's Kettle on the Brule River in Judge C.R. Magny State Park, Minnesota. Here, the river reaches a rock formation and splits in 2. The eastern channel tumbles down a waterfall and continues on toward Lake Superior, exactly as a river should. The western channel pours into a deep hole in the rock, a churning pothole, and vanishes. For decades, this was one of the great small mysteries of North America. People threw sticks, logs, and ping-pong balls into the hole. They poured in dye. In some accounts, they even dropped in colored objects and then watched the lake and the lower river for days, waiting for something to reappear. Nothing ever did. The water and everything in it simply disappeared into the earth. In 2017, hydrologists with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, including Jeff Green, measured the flow above and below the falls and found they were nearly equal, strongly suggesting that the water rejoins the river just downstream, underground. It seemed like the answer. But when researchers went to test it directly by adding dye, follow-up attempts to conclusively track the water still ran into trouble, and the earlier failures of every object ever thrown in have never been fully explained. The leading theory is now plausible, but the Devil's Kettle continues to swallow half a river, and the case is not quite as closed as the headlines suggested. Number 4. The Nazca Lines etched into the high desert plateau of southern Peru. Across roughly 450 square kilometers, the ground is covered in enormous drawings, straight lines running for kilometers, geometric shapes, and giant figures of animals. A hummingbird, a monkey, a spider, a condor, some stretching hundreds of meters across. They were made more than 1,500 years ago by the Nazca culture, who scraped away the dark surface stones to reveal the pale ground beneath. Because they are so vast, many of them can only be fully appreciated from the air. The German researcher Maria Reiche devoted much of her life to studying and protecting them. And the mystery is not really how they were made, that part is reasonably well understood, but why? Why would a people with no way to fly create enormous images meant to be seen from above? Theories abound. Some argue the lines are astronomical, aligned with the sun, moon, or stars. Others believe they are tied to water and irrigation, sacred pathways walked in rituals to summon rain in one of the driest places on Earth. And the mystery keeps growing. As recently as the last few years, researchers at Yamagata University in Japan, led by Masato Sakai, have used artificial intelligence to scan the desert and discover dozens of previously unknown figures. The more we find, the larger the question becomes. We can trace every line. We still cannot say with certainty what they were for. Number 3. Socotra Island in the Arabian Sea, part of Yemen, but drifting in biological isolation for around 20 million years. Stepping onto Socotra feels like stepping onto another planet, and that is not an exaggeration used lightly. Around a third of its plant species exist nowhere else in the world. The most famous is the dragon's blood tree, an umbrella-shaped giant whose crown looks like an inverted mushroom and whose sap runs deep red when the bark is cut, giving the tree its name. Ancient cultures prize that red resin as a medicine and a dye. Alongside it grow bloated bottle trees, bizarre desert roses that swell like the legs of an elephant, and cucumber trees found on no other landmass. The reason for all this strangeness is isolation. Cut off from the mainland for tens of millions of years, life on Socotra evolved down its own private path, producing forms that look almost prehistoric. A British naturalist who visited in the 1800s called it the strangest place on Earth. What scientists cannot fully explain is how so many of these species have persisted, unchanged in appearance, for so long, and how they will survive now that the outside world has finally found the island. Socotra is a living museum of evolution, and much of its story is still being read for the first time. Number 2. Dean's Blue Hole, off the coast of Long Island in the Bahamas. From the surface, it looks like an ordinary turquoise lagoon ringed by pale sand. But at one point, the sandy bottom abruptly gives way to a perfect dark circle, and the floor drops out entirely. Dean's Blue Hole plunges straight down to around 202 meters, making it one of the deepest known underwater sinkholes in the world. To put that in perspective, you could sink a 60-story building into it and see nothing but the roof. These blue holes formed during past ice ages, when sea levels were far lower, and rainwater slowly dissolved the limestone into vast caverns, which later flooded as the oceans rose. That much is understood. What is not fully mapped is what lies at the bottom. Below a certain depth, the water becomes a layer of hydrogen sulfide and oxygen-free darkness, hostile to most life and difficult to explore. Divers have reached the floor, but the side passages and caverns branching off into the rock remain largely uncharted. Free divers are drawn here to test the limits of the human body on a single breath, descending into a darkness that has swallowed more than one of them. We know how deep it goes. We still do not fully know what is down there, or where all of its tunnels lead. Number 1. Lake Vostok, buried beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. This is the place we opened with, and it is number 1 for a reason. It is the largest of Antarctica's subglacial lakes, roughly the size of Lake Ontario, and it lies beneath almost 4 kilometers of ice, sealed away in complete darkness and crushing pressure. Most remarkably, it has been isolated from the rest of the world for an estimated 15 million years, an entire self-contained environment, untouched since long before our species existed. After decades of drilling, in February of 2012, a Russian team finally reached the surface of the lake water. And when researchers, including microbiologist Scott Rogers of Bowling Green State University, analyzed the ice that had frozen from the lake water, they found something astonishing. Thousands of fragments of DNA and RNA, evidence of bacteria, fungi, and signatures suggesting far more complex organisms. Some of the sequences matched species known from lakes, oceans, and even the guts of fish and other animals. And crucially, a portion of them matched nothing in any scientific database at all. If those results hold, it means Lake Vostok may host an ecosystem that has evolved in total isolation for millions of years, life that took a different road than everything on the surface. There are still questions about contamination, and the findings are debated, which is exactly how careful science should work. But the possibility is staggering. Beneath the most lifeless-looking place on our planet may lie a hidden world, sealed off since the age of ancient apes, waiting quietly in the dark. And what came up from underneath that ice is still changing what biologists believe about where life can survive. So, there they are. 15 places scattered across our planet, each one guarding a question that science has not been able to fully close. A lake in Antarctica sealed for 15 million years, giving up DNA that matches nothing we know. A river in the Amazon that boils without a volcano. A flame behind a waterfall fed by gas that should not exist. Stones that sail across a desert floor. A cave sealed for 5.5 million years, running on chemistry instead of sunlight. Circles in the sand that no one can fully account for. Lights over a Norwegian valley that 40 years of instruments have failed to name. A river that pours into the earth and never comes back. Giant figures in the desert whose purpose is still unknown. An island of bleeding trees. A sinkhole with an unmapped floor. And a caustic red lake that turns the dead to stone and cradles the living all at once. The common thread is not fear, and it is not fantasy. It is humility. For all our satellites and sensors and supercomputers, the Earth still keeps its secrets, and it hands them back to us slowly, one careful measurement at a time. The most powerful words in science are not "I know." They are, quite often, "We do not know yet." Which of these 15 places left you with the deepest sense of wonder? Tell us in the comments below. And if you want more journeys into the parts of our world that still refuse to be explained, subscribe and stay with us. There is a great deal left to find.